Welcome to the Hindu Daily. We're kicking off a deep dive today, looking into 5 key sources that really show some radical shifts happening across the globe. We're talking geopolitics, biology, even how global finance is being restructured.
Yeah, and if there's a common thread, maybe it's about how uncertainty, whether it's military, economic, or regulatory, it's forcing countries, and maybe even biology itself, to look inward, rely on internal strengths, and find new tools.
Absolutely. Let's start with that major geopolitical story out of West Asia. We're examining the strategic labyrinth Israel finds itself tangled in after October 7th, 2023.
Yeah.
Before that day, the sources really paint a picture where the Palestine question was being pushed to the sidelines, wasn't it?
Very much so. There was real momentum behind the Abraham Accords, and the U.S. was pushing this grand diplomatic vision.
Aiming to integrate Israel fully into the region.
Exactly. And the cornerstones were things like the I2U2 group.
That's India, Israel, the UAE, and the U.S.
Right. And then there was the big one, IEEC, the India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor.
That huge railway and port network idea.
Yeah, designed to connect India, the Gulf, and Europe, essentially making Israel a central economic hub, kind of bypassing the traditional Iranian routes. They were calling it the new Middle East.
But then the October 7th attack happened. 1,200 people tragically killed. It didn't just shatter Israel's sense of security, did it? It seemed to drag the Palestine question right back into the spotlight.
Violently so. And when Israel launched its military response, the stated goals were clear enough: destroy Hamas, get the 251 hostages back.
But the sources we're looking at suggest there were deeper, maybe unspoken ambitions at play.
That's what's really interesting. The implication is that Israel saw this as a chance for a fundamental reordering of the region. The goal wasn't just beating Hamas.
It was bigger than that.
It seems so. More like crushing Palestinian resistance in all its forms, dismantling Iran's network, its axis of resistance, and basically trying to create a unipolar West Asia with Israel as the dominant military power, the security guarantor, and Iran pushed back.
And if we just look at the military side, purely tactically, Israel did make some undeniable gains toward that goal.
Oh, definitely. Hamas infrastructure took a massive hit. And even with talk of withdrawals, Israel still controls key areas, parts of Rafah, Khan Yunis. Plus, Hezbollah in Lebanon has been significantly restrained by repeated strikes.
And we shouldn't forget the ripple effects, like in Syria.
Exactly. The sources point to the collapse of the Assad regime as a tactical win for Israel. Assad was that crucial link between Iran and Hezbollah. Losing him weakened Iran's supply lines significantly.
Which arguably emboldened Israel further, leading to those major airstrikes on Iran itself in June 2025.
That seems to be the context, yes. Aimed at degrading Iran's military and, well, its nuclear capabilities.
Okay, but here's the twist, isn't it? The sources argue these tactical wins are hiding some really catastrophic strategic failures, that Israel's actually trapped itself. What's the core strategic mistake?
Well, the biggest one seems to be misjudging the enemy. Hamas isn't just some isolated group you can surgically remove. It's deeply woven into Palestinian nationalism, into the society itself.
It's an idea as much as an organization.
Precisely. And when faced with overwhelming force, it did what movements often do. It adapted, reinvented itself as an insurgency. You can't really bomb an idea out of existence. And second, the whole point was to sideline the Palestine question, right?
Yeah, push it off the agenda.
But the war did the exact opposite. It forced the issue right back to the center stage. Now you have even close partners, historical allies, formally recognizing Palestinian statehood, a complete reversal.
And the regional fallout you mentioned. The bombing campaign extended way beyond Palestinian territories.
That's crucial. Bombing 5 other countries, including Qatar, a close U.S. ally known for its stability, that forced Arab nations to completely rethink their security calculations.
Which connects directly to the diplomatic goals.
Absolutely. That big Saudi normalization deal, it's off the table indefinitely now. Partnering with Israel became too politically costly for Riyadh, which means IMEEC, that quarter project, depending on Saudi-Israeli cooperation. Paralyzed. And I2U2 is frozen too. The UAE drew a line, especially regarding West Bank annexation. So that whole vision of a new Middle East, it's in tatters. Israel's neighbors increasingly see it as a source of instability, not security. That leads to isolation.
The harsh reality is no clear exit plan, growing international isolation, and the realization that the only way back to that pre-October 7 diplomatic vision involves confronting the Palestine question head-on, a real labyrinth. Okay, let's shift gears now. From that geopolitical turbulence to economics, and specifically India's push for Atmanirbharta's self-reliance. Historically, this idea has fueled some major national wins, like the Green Revolution, the IT boom.
And that internal focus is arguably more critical now than ever, especially for financing India's growth. Why? Because the global picture is getting tougher. Global investment flows actually shrank by over 11% in 2024. Borrowing money internationally is getting more expensive too.
So India can't just rely on unpredictable foreign capital for its big growth plans. It needs to unlock wealth from within.
Exactly. And the biggest, most untapped pool of domestic capital. It's gold. We all know its cultural importance, but the sheer amount held privately is just mind-boggling.
Give us the numbers again.
Estimates suggest Indian households hold around 25,000 tons of gold. That is literally the world's largest private stash.
Wow.
And in value terms, we're talking something like $2.4 trillion. That's more than half, over 55% of India's projected GDP for the next fiscal year. Think about it. It's more value locked up in gold than all the loans provided by India's entire banking system combined.
Okay, that $2.4 trillion figure. If you're a policymaker, that's the number that grabs you. But here's the paradox, the frustrating part. India still imports about 87% of its gold. Historically, gold imports have eaten up nearly a third of the trade deficit.
It's a classic case, sitting on a mountain of wealth but still paying to bring more in from outside.
So what's the solution? The sources stress it can't be about forcing people, right? Past attempts to just restrict gold imports didn't really work.
No, coercion backfires. It has to be about trust. A revitalized gold monetization scheme, but one that learns from past failures. The old scheme struggled because, well, they lacked trust and were cumbersome.
Friction and logistics were huge problems, weren't they? Plus, maybe a bit of suspicion about the whole process. Convincing someone to part with family heirlooms for a system that felt opaque? That's a tough sell.
Exactly. So the new approach needs to be built on global best practices. Think digitalization, innovative products, making it easy and transparent to bring that gold into the formal economy.
So what are the key ingredients needed, according to the sources?
3 main things. First, infrastructure. You need way more Bureau of Indian Standards registered hallmarking centers scaled up fast. People need to trust the valuation of their gold, especially unbranded household jewelry.
Okay, trusted valuation is step 1. What's next?
Second, logistics. Banks are great at handling the money side, the financial accounts, but you need specialized centers, experts, to handle the physical gold securely, the collection, testing, storage.
Makes sense.
And the third piece?
Digitalization. This is key for transparency. Depositors need to be able to track their metal balance just as easily as they track their regular bank savings account online. Simple, clear, real-time.
And underpinning all of this, as you said, is trust, removing those friction points.
Absolutely critical. Getting rid of unnecessary hurdles like GST or customs checks on deposits, and guaranteeing simple, no questions asked returns when people want their gold back or its equivalent value. If they can get this right, even mobilizing a fraction of that $2.4 trillion.
The economic payoff is huge. Massive. The cost of funds raised this way could be around 4.5% to 6.5%. That's significantly cheaper than borrowing internationally right now. A huge potential boost for self-reliant growth.
Fascinating. Okay, from macroeconomics, let's zoom right down to the micro, to fundamental biology. We're looking at the genetics behind how bat wings evolved. It's such a cool puzzle, isn't it? Bats are the only mammals with powered flight.
And yet they start with the same basic toolkit, that 5-digit limb structure, just like a mouse or, us.
It really underscores a huge shift in understanding evolution, doesn't it? The old idea was big physical differences must mean big, unique DNA differences.
Right. But now we know most mammals share a very similar set of core genes. So the magic isn't necessarily in inventing new genes, but in how you use the ones you already have. It's all about regulatory evolution changing when, where, and how strongly those shared genes are switched on or off during development.
So for bats, the initial hypothesis focused on the webbing between their fingers, the chiropterygium. Scientists thought maybe bats just stop the process that normally gets rid of that skin.
Exactly. The theory was they suppressed apoptosis-programmed cell death, which usually sculpts separate fingers in other mammals. Keep the skin, get a wing, seemed logical.
But this big new study, the Interspecies Limb Atlas, dug much deeper, looking at tens of thousands of individual cells in developing bat and mouse limbs. Did it confirm that simple stop cell death idea?
It did not, and that was the first big surprise. When they looked closely, cell by cell, over 180,000 of them, the bat and mouse limbs looked almost identical at that level early on. And crucially, genes linked to cell death, like ALD1A2 and BAM2, were still active between the bat's developing digits.
So the wing skin wasn't just being passively saved from removal.
Apparently not. Something else was actively building it or maintaining it differently, which led to the second surprise, the real aha moment.
What was that?
They found a specific population of cells called fibroblasts. These are connective tissue cells that were present only in the region between the bat's developing fingers, not in the mouse equivalent.
Ah, so evolution didn't necessarily invent a whole new cell type from scratch.
Exactly. It seems it repurposed an existing type of fibroblast. In mice, similar cells are usually found up near the shoulder. In bats, evolution somehow switched them on or got them to migrate to this new location between the digits.
That's evolutionary co-option, right?
Yeah.
Taking an existing tool and using it for a new job, and they figured out what was driving these fibroblasts.
Yes. Two key molecules called transcription factors. Think of them as master switches. Their names are MI2 and KBX3. In mice and humans, these switches normally turn off in the hands and feet as fingers form. But in bats, in that specific interdigital region,
They get switched back on.
precisely, evolution reactivated them in a new time and place.
Incredible. And they actually tested this idea.
They did, and this is the really cool part. They created transgenic mice, genetically engineered mice, where they forced these two bat factors, MIS2 and TBX3, to be switched on in the developing mouse paws where they're normally silent.
And what happened?
The mouse embryos started developing features reminiscent of bat wings. They got thicker, webbed digits, and expanded connective tissue in those areas. It partially recreated the bat wing development program just by flicking those two switches.
Wow. Just two factors making such a huge anatomical difference. Does this suggest that this regulatory tinkering model is becoming the main explanation for these kinds of evolutionary leaps?
The source suggests it's a very powerful model, yes. This idea of repurposing shared genes by tweaking their regulation could explain lots of other evolutionary puzzles, bird wings, whale flippers, and understanding these mechanisms isn't just academic.
How so?
Well, it could potentially give us insights into human developmental conditions like syndactyly, where fingers or toes are fused. Understanding how development normally works and how it was tweaked in evolution helps us understand when things go wrong.
Right, a new way to look at both evolution and human health. Fascinating stuff. Okay, let's pivot back to India's economy for our next piece. This one focuses on Indian capital and the need to boost domestic demand. There's a real policy challenge here, isn't there? Trying to balance the long-term benefits of global trade with the short-term pain it can sometimes cause domestically, like job insecurity or low wages.
It's a huge balancing act. And the argument here is that Indian capital needs to shift its mindset. It needs to move beyond just maximizing immediate profits and actively align itself more with the broader public interest, especially in uncertain times.
Why the urgency now?
Because the global economy is looking shaky. We're seeing unprecedented tariffs, shocks to external demand. Relying too heavily on exports is risky. So focusing on strengthening the domestic market isn't just, a nice to have, it's becoming a crucial buffer for overall growth.
So if boosting domestic demand is key, how specifically can Indian capital contribute? The article lays out three main pathways.
Right. The first route is pretty straightforward. More internal private investment. And here's where there's a disconnect. Indian corporations, Indie Inc., they're sitting on record profits right now.
But they aren't investing it back into the domestic economy as much as you'd expect.
Exactly. Private investment has been kind of flat. This is despite the government really stepping up its own spending. Public capital expenditure has been booming, growing at a compound annual rate, a CAGR, of 25% between fiscal year 20 and FY 25.
So the government's priming the pump, but the private sector isn't fully jumping in. And what's really striking is where Indian companies are putting their money.
Yeah, this is telling. India's outward foreign direct investment, that's Indian companies investing abroad, actually grew faster at a 12.6% CAGR over the same period than domestic investment. It suggests a preference, maybe for perceived efficiency or opportunities elsewhere.
That definitely needs addressing. What's the second route?
The second route is moderate wage growth. This hits the distribution problem. As we said, corporate profits hit a 15-year high in 2023-24, but wage growth has been stagnant.
Which directly hurts domestic demand, right? If people aren't earning more, they can't spend more.
Precisely. You can't power a consumption-driven economy with flat wages. And the trend isn't great. The article projects real wage growth might actually decline slightly, from 7% to 6.5%.
And the reason cited is the rise of contractual work.
Yes, the increasing contractualization of labor. This tends to weaken workers' collective bargaining power, putting downward pressure on wages.
Okay, so more domestic investment, better wage growth. What's the third row?
The third one is R&D investment, research and development. India's overall spending here is quite low, only about 0.64% of GDP.
How does that compare internationally?
Not favorably, especially in terms of who funds it. In places like the US, China, Japan, South Korea, the private sector typically funds 70% or more of the national R&D effort. In India, the private sector only funds about 36%. And even that funding is concentrated in just a few industries.
So we need more private sector R&D for long-term innovation and competitiveness.
Absolutely. The overall message from this source is pretty clear. The government has laid the groundwork, offered incentives, simplified policies. Now the onus is shifting towards Indian capital. It needs to prioritize national interest and long-term stability, potentially over maximizing short-term profits, especially to shield the economy from global shocks.
A call for a strategic shift from India Inc. Okay, for our final segment, let's dive into the world of digital finance and stablecoins. These seem to be becoming a really important part of the global financial plumbing. Let's start with the basics. What exactly are stablecoins?
Sure. So stablecoins are a specific type of crypto asset. Their main defining feature is that they aim to maintain a stable value relative to something else, usually a major fiat currency like the US dollar, or sometimes a commodity.
And that stability is what really sets them apart from other cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin or Ether, which can be incredibly volatile, right? They're often called virtual digital assets or VDAs.
Exactly. That stability is key to their function. And we can broadly put them into three main buckets. First, you have fiat-backed stablecoins. These are the most common, like USDT, Tether, or USDC, USD coin. They're supposed to hold reserves of actual fiat currency, like dollars, to back the coins they issue.
Okay, what's the second type?
Second is crypto-backed stablecoins. DAI is a well-known example here. Instead of fiat currency, they're backed by reserves of other crypto assets, often Ether. They tend to be over-collateralized to handle volatility.
And the third type?
That's algorithmic stablecoins. These are more experimental and frankly more risky. They don't rely on reserves in the same way. Instead, they use complex software algorithms, sometimes combined with another related crypto token, to try and maintain their price peg. Terra USD, which collapsed spectacularly, was one of these.
Right, the algorithmic ones have proven tricky. But the fiat-backed ones especially seem to be genuinely revolutionizing certain areas, like cross-border payments.
Oh, absolutely. The efficiency gains compared to the old ways, like using the SWIFT network, are just dramatic.
How so? Speed? Cost?
Both. Transactions can settle literally in seconds instead of taking days. And the cost difference is stunning. Sending money across borders using stablecoins can cost as little as, say, 1 cent on average. Compare that to around $44 through traditional banking channels. It's a different world.
And they've achieved significant scale now, haven't they? This isn't just a tiny niche anymore.
Not at all. A Visa report from 2025 mentioned there was over $220 billion worth of stablecoins in circulation globally. That's serious volume.
Which explains why we're seeing major financial institutions getting involved now. It's moved beyond the crypto enthusiasts.
Definitely. You've got giants like BlackRock, Fidelity, Bank of America launching stablecoin initiatives. Societe Generale, a major European bank, even issued its own dollar-pegged stablecoin in 2025. This is mainstream finance adopting the technology.
And crucially, regulators are starting to catch up and provide frameworks.
That's a huge step towards legitimacy. You have the EU's MiCA regulations, markets and crypto assets, and the US has things like the Genius Act. These are providing clear definitions, standards, rules of the road. They're transforming stablecoins from this unregulated space into potentially regulated financial instruments.
And payment giants are integrating them too.
Yes, Visa and MasterCard are now supporting stablecoin settlement directly on blockchain networks like Ethereum and Solana. That really signals a shift, seeing stablecoins as a new, efficient layer for moving value.
So what does this mean for India? The finance minister recently indicated India needs to be ready to engage with these assets.
It's a critical point for India. The real potential, perhaps, isn't just using stablecoins in isolation, but finding ways to make them work with India's existing world-class digital infrastructure.
You mean linking stablecoins with things like UPI, Aadhaar, the account aggregator framework?
Exactly. Imagine the power of connecting India's domestic digital rails, which are incredibly efficient, with these emerging global digital rails offered by stablecoins. That interoperability could be huge for trade, remittances, and financial inclusion.
So the final thought here isn't about stablecoins replacing currencies like the rupee or the dollar.
No, not replacing them, but fundamentally changing what fiat money feels like to use, making it faster, cheaper, more programmable, more suited to the speed and automation of the internet-based economy. That's the real transformation stablecoins represent.
Thank you for listening. If you want to provide suggestions, please contact on the Twitter handle given in the episode description. As always, we are eager to hear what our listeners want to be informed about. We wish you a great day.